Lequita Brooks here. I am your social impact speaker and strategist. Welcome to Social Impact Sundays at 6, where we have massive social impact that leads to income. And today we have Shykera Coats. She is a military social worker. She's doing a lot of amazing things in the social work profession, and she has her MSW degree, and she'll talk more about that and some of her beliefs around licensure and being in the military and now working with the federal government and all the things. Welcome, Shykera.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you for joining us on the social work movement so we can change this narrative. So we're going to jump right into it, Shykera. Tell me about some of your thoughts when it comes to, I guess, being able to attain the career that you love in social work, even without pursuing licensure.
Yeah, that's always an interesting one because, you know, I get a lot of beef for not being a licensed social worker. And it's never really been on my bucket list of things to do. But I will say that it's because I've always known what I wanted to do. I have always wanted to work in macro social work. Um, with my background being in the military, I saw a lot of issues within the military that needed to get fixed. And I knew that therapy, while it's absolutely wonderful, and I am an advocate for everybody, like if you are living on this earth for like more than 3 days, you probably need to go to therapy. Uh, but I knew that that wasn't my contribution to the social work profession. I knew that the only way things really change is through systemic change. And I didn't think it was necessary for us to leave it up to our politicians to be the ones to do the social change because they're not here in our lives. They're not, our politicians are not in the military with us every day. They're not the ones dropping off their kids at 5 o'clock in the morning and picking them up at 6 o'clock in the evening. They're not the ones having to put their kids on wait lists for childcare for months and months before the child is even born. They're not the ones getting deployed every other year. And I was like, really, what changes we needed required a systemic approach. And that's where social work comes in. Like that's what we're taught in undergrad. The basis of what we do is systemic change. So why not? So in general, like I said, that's just me. I will, if the opportunity arises for me to get my social work licensure because what I'm doing is in that arena, sure, I am more than happy to do it. But for now and probably for the foreseeable future, it's just not on my table because nothing I've done has ever required it. And I've always known that macro work is what I need to do. Um, I've secretly ran away from a career in politics just because I was a little afraid of what that entailed. So I'm good with social work. I think I can use social work as the vehicle to get the systemic change I wanted. So, that's kind of how I operate in a nutshell.
Yes, and social work and social workers do advocate and they make the systemic changes. And I think the key thing that you said was that you knew what you desired. So, regardless of what someone said or the different beliefs or the narratives related to getting your clinical licensure, you're like, you know what? That's not necessarily in alignment. Like, I know what my desires are, I know my path, and I'm going to be intentional about the different opportunities that I take, the positions that's going to be in alignment. So I think that was really great for you to know, like, this is where I'm at today, and this is where I desire to be. And I'm going to do the things that's in alignment, regardless of the push for clinical licenses for everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's just important that you have to know what it is you want to do, because it may be, there will be times when what you're doing is what everybody else is doing. But what really, really gets you mentally is when you say, hey, I'm going left. And everybody's like, no, no, we're all going right. I'm like, no, 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 no. But I'm not, and then people start dragging you right. And you're like, wait, this is not what I wanted. And you have to be headstrong and almost stubborn enough to say, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I will see you guys on the other side. Have a great day, and just go for it.
Exactly. So when you first started your social work career, tell me about those experiences.
Ooh, well, let's see. So my journey into social work is a little bit unconventional. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I was in the military for 10 years, and then I got medically retired. Um, and so because of that, because they broke me and they couldn't fix me, I got to go back to school with a GI Bill, and I was like, I'm gonna, take some good use of this. And I went and I got my undergrad. I wasn't really satisfied after I finished undergrad school. I did an internship with Army Community Services down here in U.S. Army Southcom in Miami. So I was like, well, that was kind of cool, but I need to do something else. So I went back and I got my master's degree. Um, I did a internship with Sylvester Cancer Center at University of Miami. Discovered that I absolutely hated medical social work. Absolutely. More power to those of you who could do it. It is not for me. And it's funny because, like I was telling you earlier, I have a thing for being able to find systemic issues. I've been that way since I was in high school. It got me in trouble in the military constantly because I'd be like, why is this even like this? This doesn't make any sense. Everybody like, just do what we tell you to do. And I'm like, okay, never mind. And even when I was doing my internship at Sylvester, like I would find issues and I'm like, why do we have to do it like that? Why can't we do it like this? As a matter of fact, I had one issue where we were doing a support group for I think it was like head, neck, and throat cancer. And so if you know anything about Miami, the population is, predominantly either Hispanic or Haitian. And so I'm going up to these patients, and most of them, their primary and their only language is Spanish. And I don't speak enough Spanish to really, be useful. So, like, I would try to talk, and I was like, but I don't know what to say because I could speak in English, but they're just looking at me like, what? And I'm like, oh, that's an issue now, isn't it? And even our flyers was in English. So I thought about this for a couple of days and I had to go back to my supervisor. I was like, hey, these flyers are not in Spanish or Haitian Creole, and a good chunk of our client base does not speak English. And we should probably gear the flyers towards them, if we want them to come. She was like, that's a good idea. So, I was like, why didn't you think of that? Because don't you talk to them every day? So we made up flyers in Spanish and in Haitian Creole. I actually learned how to say, our little spiel in Spanish and in Haitian Creole so I could get people to, now, if they had to ask me questions, I was like, ooh, I don't got that. But at least I could speak it enough to be able to convey to them that, hey, we do have a support group going on and this is the point of contact. So I did that. And I was like, and then I finished grad school and I was like, see, this is my issue again. I'm always pointing out systemic issues. I need to be in a job where I can see issues and then try to fix them, And so then after that, I worked with U.S. Army recruiting in Miami. So I was the what? Oh gosh, the Soldier and Family Assistance Program Manager. That's a very long title. So I did that, which allowed me to do all the fixing of the problems, which, made me very happy for a couple of years. And then a job came along in primary prevention where the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, all of them decided that, hey, we need to look at the amounts of suicides, sexual assaults, all the harmful behaviors. And we really need to get ahead of this stuff because we're really good at reacting to it, but we really don't do anything to actively get ahead of it. I'm like, yes, we do. My inner researcher was like, yes, thank you. This is the job for me. And so that's kind of how I fell into that. And for me, it was just like, I loved research in school. When everybody else was crying about papers, I was just sitting there like, everybody else was dying. And I was just like, man, this is fun. And they was like, man, APA is terrible. And I'm like, no, it's not really, And so I was like, oh, finally, I actually get to do the research that I did in school and my actual job and get paid for it. And so that's what I do now and absolutely love it. And yeah, having my clinical licensure has never come up as an issue.
And what advice would you share with that aspiring social worker who's like you, who enjoys research, who enjoys, identifying systemic problems and coming up with solutions? What would you say to them? Or a social worker who is on the micro track and they're in a micro role, but they know internally that they should be doing something that's more macro, but they just can't find their way. What would you say to them?
I would say, first and foremost, stop looking for jobs that says social worker in the title. Stop. Don't do it because you will never find it because that is not, because the rest of the world does not understand that social workers do macro work. So you will see all kinds of jobs that are right up your alley, but it would be a godsend if social worker was actually added onto that title, but it probably won't be. So one, definitely look for jobs that don't have any, that don't say specifically social worker in the title, because you're not really going to find it. That's kind of going to put you back in the micro field. Program manager, program analyst, program specialist, quality of life, advocacy. Look for those type of job titles first and foremost. That's going to be like your biggest um, tip, really. And then I'm partial, but please, please, please give federal employment a chance. Please. Like, their hiring process is long. It takes a little while, but honestly, it is a wonderful group to work for. I love working for the federal government. I get every federal holiday off. Um, let's see, I accrue leave time like it's nobody's business. Oh my God, COVID happened, and I had they actually, you get so many hours per pay period, and now I'm at the point where I have what they call use or lose time. So you have to use it by October. Otherwise, you will lose it, and they do not want you to lose that time because then that's paperwork. They don't want to do the paperwork. And I have plenty of leave time. I have plenty of regular leave time. I have plenty of sick leave time. It's a great entity to work for. It's a little bit, it's a little slow, the hiring process, but definitely give the federal government a try. So, and then lastly, I would say people are going to tell you that you were doing it wrong all day long, all the time. Like, they're going to try to beat you into submission to say that you are doing it wrong and you have to do it this way. You do not. You do not. If you know that what you're doing is going to be in the macro field, that's where you need to go. Like, find yourself in positions where you can do macro work, whether it's with your local government, which is actually a great place to start, get into grassroots entities, all the big picture things. Find yourself in those spaces. You cannot sit in a room full of people that are not trying to do what you're doing and convince them that you're okay doing what you're doing. You just have to find yourself in a space with other people that want to do what you do and be okay with the fact that you're not always going to be looked at as a social worker. And sometimes you're going to be the only social worker in the room. And that's okay, though. That's a little bit weird to get used to because then they're looking at you like, hey, you have all this information. What can you tell us about? And I'm like, me? Me? You talking about me? I'm like, yeah, you. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I got asked to write a needs assessment for work. And I was like, you want me to do what? Who? Like, I'm gonna take the lead on writing this? And they're like, yeah, you can do it. I'm like, yeah, I can. So like all those writing papers in school, like I had to like really bring all that knowledge back and remember how to write again. But that's the thing. Just always know that you might often be the only one in the room, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know.
Those are some really great tips. Look for opportunities that don't have the title social work, program analyst, program manager, advocacy. Also, you mentioned federal government. Also, do what you feel is right for you. You don't have to go to the left. You can go to the right if you want to. And far as federal employments, I've seen in quite a few like social work groups where people are like, oh my gosh, I've applied so many times for a federal position and I'm just not getting the opportunities. So, what would be some strategies you might recommend to support someone with getting federal employment?
I say one, when you go on to USA Jobs, definitely look at they have a resume builder. So look at how their resumes are built because what I have discovered, because now I have the opposite problem, I don't know how to write a civilian resume, but I can write federal resumes because they're written completely different. So take a look on USA Jobs about how federal resumes are written and then match your skill set accordingly. But just like civilian jobs, they look for KSAs, so make sure that your skill set matches um what they're looking for. And that's really the biggest thing is make sure that, if they're looking for someone that has knowledge of XYZ program and you've done that back in the day, make sure that's in your resume. Make sure you say, hey, not only do I have experience with this, but I was responsible for precisely this, and this was the outcome. So it's kind of like you kind of have to, like if you have like a yearly assessment on yourself in your regular job, you have to pretty much take those bullets and make them into your resume. And they don't mind that it's a little lengthier. So I know like in most civilian resumes are like, how big is how long is the average civilian resume right now?
You know what's funny? I actually worked for the government for 6.5 years. So my last resume is actually, I think, is it like the OF-306 layout?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I honestly don't even know about what the civilian resume is, but I will say, oh, I did teach um
Mm.
for at FDU. So
Mm-hmm.
with that, my CV is extremely long because I've just done a lot from news to doing things like this and also my positions. So I would say it's designed more like a CV with links,
Yes.
YouTubes, and all that. And it's at least 7 or 8 pages. Like it's
Yes.
long.
And I think
Um,
people get scared when they see that. I'm like, no, it is okay if your federal
yeah.
pay is like 3 pages plus. It happens, especially if you have just that much experience, you know. And just like with civilian jobs, make sure that your resume really is reflective of what they're looking for. Like, make sure that those keywords, make sure they're in your resume every single time. Like for every job, like make sure you get at least like 3 of those KSA, in there. So this job, hey, if they're looking for this, try to find 3 of those things and put them in that one job in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's like the biggest thing is making sure what they're looking for the job is what you can do, you know. And it's okay to be a little wordy because I think that's like par for the course for federal resumes.
It definitely is. And plus, people have to keep in mind there's a computerized system. So if you don't have those keywords in your resume, no matter how great or awesome you are, the computer might just kick you out automatically just because you don't hit a certain percentage of the keywords.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's really like the biggest thing is making sure and make sure that you write your resume for that particular job. I've accepted, I haven't worked this many jobs, but I've accepted at least 6 federal positions. I've turned a good chunk of them down. But my resume has been different for every single one. Not drastically. Like I have one master resume that I put everything I've ever done in my life on, and then when the position comes up, I can take those bullets and put them on that particular resume. So that's a good strategy. Have one big master resume, and then for whatever position comes out, you can just cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste.
That makes so much sense. Like, why didn't I think of that?
Because I was like, well, do they really care that I did this? No, they don't. But it might come in handy in some other job someday. So it's just having one big old one, and then I could just take what I need and put away what I don't. And it's really helped me over the years. Now my master resume is ridiculous. It's probably like 9, 10 pages long. But like I said, it has everything I've ever done. Like even my military stuff. It has all the way when I was an IT um, person, like back when I fixed computers, even that's on there. Will that ever come in handy in social work? Actually, it does because everybody thinks that I'm like the master of Excel spreadsheets. I'm not, but they're like, "Oh, you did IT." Yeah,
Yes, social workers can do
everything.
everything. So, what's next for you? I know we talked about a mentorship program. What is that about?
Okay, so right now I am working with some service members in the National Guard. And there's a big difference between the active duty and the reserve component, because in the active duty, the mentorship is kind of built in because you're there 24/7. You eat it, you live it, you breathe it, you're like that's your life. The military is your life. Most of the junior enlisted, live on the installation, and you interact with your supervisors like 12 plus hours a day. But in the reserve component, yeah, I know. Like you get to know them well. But in the reserve component, it's not like that, especially particularly in the National Guard and the reserves, because they only see each other like 1 week in a month and about 2 weeks, for annual training. But they still need to know their job and do all the military tasks and do all the professional development as if they were active duty, which is kind of a big ask, you know, because on top of them only being there part time, the other part of their job is that they're doing their regular careers. So I sat down with one of the senior NCOs and she was like, we really need like a mentorship program. She's like, because even though I'm here, down in Homestead doing this job, I'm one of two people that do this job in Homestead. Like the other people that do it are up in Jacksonville, or there's another people and they do it and they're in Stark, or somebody else that does it and they're in Orlando. She said, but I still have questions sometimes. She's like, and sometimes you just want to just talk about professional development, like not just email people and get questions asked and answered. But she's like, I really want to know what other people's journey was like, coming up through the ranks so that I know what to prepare myself for. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, you know what? Sounds like, a mentorship program would be good. And she's like, yeah. So right now that's what we're in the process of doing. We're building a program so that the junior NCOs can, well, not commissioned officers, sorry, I get stuck in my acronyms. The junior non-commissioned officers can, talk to the more senior leaders and they have like a two-way communication street. I think how we're gonna set up initially it's just kind of like have a bulletin on Teams and have all the senior leaders, do like a short bio of themselves and say, hey, I've been in this many times, this many years, this is my background, this is my military occupational specialty. I've been here, 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 and then the junior NCOs can actually use that information to reach out to the seniors and say, hey, can I schedule a one-on-one with you? And then they can schedule it on their off time so that they can find a time that works best for them. And then during their annual trainings and during their weekend trainings, we can have like small mini groups where the senior NCOs say, hey, we're going to have a discussion about um, something like NCOERs. So that's like the system that the NCOs use to get promoted. So that's pretty much like their evals, their yearly evals. But there's a specific way that has to actually get written. So they're like, hey, we're going to have a class on how to write your NCOER, how to make it stand out so that when you go before the board and they're looking at your record, they're like, oh, this is a great soldier. They did all these great things. Or they'll have a class on the more senior boards so that the junior soldiers will know, hey, it's not just enough to have good evaluations, but you also need to go to this type of class or have this specialty training, and just to teach them how to make the most out of their military career. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. It's really cool. I never thought of that being an issue for the reserve component, but then when I thought about it, I was like, oh, they really don't meet regularly like that. Okay, so it's kind of cool.
Yes, and it's really cool that you're part of this new initiative, doing the things that you love with your MSW degree, basically filling in the bridging the gaps.
Yep.
Where you see there are systemic challenges or maybe hurdles to promotion opportunities that you just didn't recognize was there. And now you're like, hey, you know what? I do see that in here. This is how these are some viable solutions to help individuals be able to get those promotions, to have, those opportunities.
Yeah. And the best thing is, honestly, at the end of the day, it'll end up being ran by the leadership. Like the only part that I'm going to have in it is really just helping them set it up and then just checking in and be like, hey, you guys good? But that's it. So I love that part that I just kind of get to look at it, help them come up with something that works for them. So I think that's the best part is that I'm not coming in just to fix the things. And then if I go, they wouldn't know what to do, but I'm really empowering a group of people to do what they need to do. I'm just trying to help them do it in a way that's most functional for all parties involved. So,
So developing the program, the infrastructure, and just saying, voila, here you all go.
yep. I'm like,
Be
here's your nice
amazing.
little
On to my
package
next
item.
point.
If you need me, I'll be back here. And then the cool part is that as the other part of my job is that I actually get to come back. And once the program is built in place, we actually kind of get to go back and evaluate. and see, hey, is this program working? Are we getting to the outcomes that we actually want? You know, and I think like that's the best part because the military is great at giving us a program for everything. They will give us 50 million programs for everything. If you could think of it, the Army and the Marines and the Space Force and all of them, they probably have a program for it. But what we never do is actually say, hey, do these programs work? How do we know that they work? And so it'll be nice to actually be able to be one of the people that goes in and say, does this work? Well, what are we going to use to measure if this work? How do we know how effective this is? And we actually come up and we build a plan and we evaluate the program. So, and then if it works, we're like, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. If it's not working, we're like, how can we tweak it so that it can work? You know,
Even better, full circle, being on the front end with developing and then on the back end to say, hey, let's evaluate this.
definitely fun and exciting. So if you like to research and you like to write, then yeah, as a matter of fact, since prevention is such a new program, there will be posts for primary prevention specialist and primary prevention data analyst. So if you're interested, go on USA Jobs because they're hiring in almost every freaking state. Like yeah, go be a prevention specialist, please.
Check it out, check it out, check it out. Thank you so much, Shykera.
Thank you for having me. This is such an awesome thing. This is so cool.
I've enjoyed our interview today. Thank you again for joining us on Social Impact Sundays at 6. I am Lequita Brooks, your social impact speaker and strategist. And make sure you go to thesocialworkmovement.com. Once again, that is thesocialworkmovement.com to get involved. Until next time, have an amazing day.